I'll touch on Jaylen Brown's leadership comments. Before we jump into this, I think it's going to be a smart idea to actually play the leadership comments. So let's
Fair
do that.
enough.
Yeah, we had some guys leave. So I wanted to make sure that, that void was filled. Marcus Smart, one of my brothers that got traded, he was one of the voices of our team. And when he wasn't here, I wanted to make sure I stepped in and make sure that, everybody felt me and everybody knew what the standard was. And we didn't skip no steps all season. I think we played the right way every single game. I've held everybody accountable, and this is the byproduct.
The byproduct without Marcus Smart, somebody needed to step up. If you remember, back when Marcus Smart was traded, Brad Stevens said that he was trading Smart because he felt like oftentimes in the clutch and down the stretch of games, JB and JT would defer to Marcus. And by removing Marcus, you were kind of putting JT and JB in a position to need to step up and kind of embrace that leadership role. That's what Stevens was aiming for. I remember vividly that discussion happening and those quotes floating around. I feel like it's a lot easier to see Brown's type of leadership because it's very in your face in terms of I'm going to be a tone setter. I'm going to come out every game. I'm going to pressure the rim. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to take on the hardest defensive matchup and be the point of attack guy against the bigger, stronger wings. Whereas Tatum's is more, I'm going to sacrifice some of my offense so everybody else can flourish around me. And sometimes that can be looked at as deferring when really he's empowering everybody. But Jalen's right, like Jalen has stepped up as a leader. I just don't think it'll be fair from a fan standpoint or a media standpoint where Jalen's credited for being the only one of the two that stepped up as a leader. It's just very different types of leadership. We've just gone through the differences there. But yeah, Jalen deserves his flowers, man. He has been on it all year, really embracing that kind of defensive minded matchup. I know he really wanted to win a defensive or like an all defense team, didn't get there, but that was a snub to him, in my opinion. I feel like he earned a spot on one of those teams.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of what's going to end up happening with that whole voting process changing too. By
Mhm.
going to positionless voting, it's going to mean there are going to be snubs on a year by year basis. And it's tough. I think, especially when it comes to defense, because big men are always going to get more love when it comes to the defensive end because stats like blocks are going to be the big sexy
It's
stat that people
easier.
use.
It's
Yeah.
just easier. Oh, he blocks shots, so he's a better defender. No, that's not how
Yeah.
it works, but I get it.
I get it. I get it. But when it comes to leadership and talking about the differences between Tatum and Brown, I think there was a void that needed to get filled when you lost Marcus. And I think that was a void that needed to happen in order for both Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to become the leaders that they needed to be. Um, as much as I love Marcus Smart, and I've said it before, I think Marcus overplayed his hand a little bit when it came to certain positions. And you could tell it in late stretches of games where he's taking shots that he shouldn't be taking or forcing passes that shouldn't be forced. And you look at how it's changed so much since then. And it obviously helps that you got Drew Holiday in here too. He was massive in this Pacers series, especially. But having someone who can kind of steady things and empowering guys like Jaylen Brown to be the leader that he's capable of being a firebrand. Like that's the best way to put it. I think you put it well with Tatum as well, where he empowers other guys. You saw it with Sam Hauser. Sam Hauser's struggling, misses a shot. Tatum immediately goes up to him. Keep on shooting, man. Keep on shooting. Like keep doing what
Shoot,
you're
gotta
doing.
shoot, man.
And that's exactly what it is. Like you want someone like that who's going to be doing that. And then you've got someone who's going to be empowering. You got another person who's putting a fire underneath you. And I think that those two like leadership styles are incredibly complementary to one another. And they're both effective is what I'm saying. And I think that with Brown, especially in order for him to really step up into a bigger leadership role, I think that Smart needed to go in order for that to happen. Because I think their leadership styles, the reason why they butted heads at first when they became teammates, because they admitted as much. Jaylen said as much too. He was like, this guy's annoying the hell out of me when I got drafted. Their leadership styles are so very similar. So they clashed at times. And there's history of that happening for sure. And I think allowing Jaylen to kind of step into this leadership role has just kind of showed his maturity as well. I think he's been tremendous this year. I think he's really stepped up. And overall, we've seen a lot of good stuff out of him this year, I think.
I think that when you look at just in terms of leadership, there's so many different ways. I feel like, yes, Brown has become the heart on his sleeve leader that you lost with Smart, then as we've said, you have Tatum that's kind of like this backseat driving leader that's doing everything that doesn't really get picked up on game to game, but you see it as an eclectic over the season. And as you said, they kind of mesh well together. It's that fire and ice, right? It's the Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum fire and ice. They work together in tandem, but they're very different in how they approach things. I do just think that because Brown's on this tear right now, and obviously won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, deserves his flowers, got snubbed for an all NBA team, snubbed for an all defensive team. I feel like people consistently overlook him because of how great Jason is and how great his overall game has been this year. Yeah, his jump shooting is struggling, but literally everything else has been elite. So Brown gets overlooked quite a bit. So for him to be finding kind of a niche within that where it's, hey, I'm the leader. I set the tone offensively because I pressure the rim. We're on and I wrote this in yesterday's newsletter. Was like, you're on a team where everybody shoots from the perimeter. It's a 3-point heavy offense. Whereas Jaylen Brown's like the antithesis to that because he's the guy that comes on the floor and he's like, no, I want to jam it down your throat. I want to drive to the rim. If you're trying to get in front of me, I'm just going to stop and pop in mid range. And that kind of sets a tone for the offense to be as aggressive as what it is. I feel like it's actually helped Drew Holiday become more of an aggressive drive guy and more of an aggressive post up guy. That's great. Give Jaylen his flowers there, but don't let that be a reason for people to try and tear down Tatum because Tatum's leadership has been just as prevalent, just a lot more understated. And I don't like this idea of, hey, we need to build Jaylen up, so we need to tear Jason down, or we need to build Tatum up, so we need to tear Tatum down or Brown down, because that's been a story throughout their career. You can only have one of them being built up while we're discrediting the other one. No, they're both right here. Sometimes Tatum's a bit higher, sometimes Brown's a bit higher. That's okay. Like, you don't need one of them to be a clear cut like alpha because this team is 4 to 7 games, sorry, 4 to 6 games away from winning a championship.
Yeah. And I think that's a good problem. It's a great problem to have when you're talking
Mhm.
about which wing is better than the other. Like the fact that we even have to have that conversation, means that you've got immense talent on that roster. And I think it ties into the Celtics hate conversation because they've started to pivot to that now because Jaylen Brown wins the Eastern Conference MVP. Oh, Tatum didn't look happy that Brown won it or whatever. Like there's always some,
Smiling his ass off.
yeah, because guess what? He gets to go to the NBA Finals again for the second time in 3 years because they've got immense talent between those two, and they've put a plethora of good players around them and made it work and mesh. You know how many times they've tried to trade one of these guys or both of these guys to bring somebody else to Boston in order to try and win a championship, and they're able to put themselves in the conversation year by year in, year out. All these guys know is like conference finals appearances. They've had 1 year where they've played together where they didn't make the conference finals recently, and that was because Brown was hurt. And outside of that, they've been having deep playoff runs. So this is, the byproduct of years of work. And honestly, you got to give flowers to Brad Stevens too, to reading the situation and empowering a guy like Jaylen Brown to grow too. And I mean, thinking about how Tatum's changed his game as well. Like he's able to flip the switch and take over a game if he needs to.
He just
But he
hasn't
also,
practiced.
yeah, and he's also, I mean, like, look, even if you look at the series with the Pacers and you say, okay, he played great, or there were things that you wanted him to do differently, you still look at the stat line at the end of the night, and he's massively impactful. Like finding ways to do it without just taking the ball and scoring in bunches. He's able to go ahead and, I mean, they both were averaging like 30 points a game. Like, this is a good problem. And
Bro,
it's not even a problem. You know what I mean? Like it's manufactured issues about leadership.
if I told you that when Tatum got drafted, right? If I turned around to you and said, right, in a few years' time, he's going to average 36 and 30, 10, and 6 in the conference finals, and that's going to be classed as a quiet series for him. 30, 10, and 6, and people are saying that Tatum's underperforming. 30, 10, and 6.
I'll
And
take
I
that.
told you, yeah, like, you'd be like, yeah, dude, sign me up. Like, that's our best player. Like, that's what he's giving you: 30 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists on average per night in a series where he was kind of getting clamped by Aaron Neesmith. And if you don't believe me, then come and check out the newsletter because I'm going to have numbers on that later today. He was struggling with his 3-point shot, only shot 30% from deep. struggled with that 3-point shot all through the postseason, still averaged 30, 10, and 6. You can't then tell me that he's not leading a team and he's not working because he's getting that offense from somewhere. People are opening up opportunities somewhere, and they're doing it in a way that doesn't take food off somebody else's plate in kind of that metaphorical sense, right? Then you look at Brown, who's also getting his offense, defending at a high level, and doing his thing without taking food. These guys are leaders, man. And like you said, these deep playoff runs, when you look at where Indiana are right now, I know we were speaking about India a moment ago or on a previous show if you're watching on YouTube. When you look at Indiana, I feel like Indiana are where Boston were at the start of their development, right? They needed this conference finals run for their personal development to give them that fire, and they're going to keep developing. The Celtics are, as you said, there. What is it? Is this their sixth conference finals in 8 years? Something like that?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
6 and 8. Like they've needed those losses to keep developing, and now they're at a point where they're a championship level team. So yeah, okay. I want to give Jaylen Brown his flowers, but I also don't want it to become something where people are tearing down JT.
Yeah. It's not necessary. You can do both. Both is good.
Yeah, both is good. I've never understood the either or mindset. Why either or when you can do both?